Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving deep into a fascinating article claiming that fintech hasn't actually disrupted the big banks, despite years of trying. It's a bold statement, isn't it?
Absolutely. It challenges the common narrative. I'm eager to hear the author's reasoning. What's the core argument?
The core argument is that while fintech has made inroads in certain areas, it hasn't fundamentally altered the core banking model, taking deposits and issuing loans. The author points to the recent Q4 2024 earnings reports of major U.S. banks as evidence. These banks, despite the rise of fintech, showed significant growth in deposits and lending, especially in consumer banking.
Interesting. So, the deposit flight predicted by many didn't materialize to the extent expected?
Exactly. The article highlights that major banks like JP Chase, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo actually saw growth in retail deposits. Even regional banks performed well. While fintech companies like SoFi and Lending Club offered high-yield savings accounts, attracting some deposits, the impact on the giants was surprisingly minimal. The author even quotes Jeremy Barnum from JP earnings call, predicting further deposit growth.
But what about the partnerships between fintechs and traditional banks? Like Cash App with Wells Fargo offering high-yield accounts. Didn't that represent a significant shift?
That's a great point. The article acknowledges these partnerships, noting that they were a strategic move by banks to access new customer deposits. However, the author questions the long-term viability of these arrangements, wondering if banks will continue paying such high rates indefinitely, especially as their own deposit growth increases.
So the disruption wasn't in the deposit side, but what about lending? Credit cards, for example, seem ripe for disruption.
That's where the article gets even more interesting. While Affirm and Robinhood launched their credit card products and gained some traction, the numbers pale in comparison to the growth of traditional players like Amex, Chase, and others. Amex, for instance, opened 13 million new accounts in 2024 alone. The author emphasizes that even with the explosion of consumer credit card debt, fintechs didn't capitalize on the opportunity to the extent expected.
I see. That's a pretty strong statement. But surely fintech has made inroads elsewhere, right? Payments, for example?
You're right to challenge that. The article concedes that fintech is making significant progress in payments, with companies like Stripe and Adyen gaining market share. It also mentions the success of fintechs in small business lending and cross-border payments. But the core argument remains. The fundamental banking model of deposits and loans remains largely untouched by fintech disruption at the largest scale.
So what's the author's conclusion? What does the future hold?
The author suggests several possibilities. It might take more time, a generational shift, or perhaps a coexistence model where banks and fintechs find ways to collaborate. Regardless, the author believes the fintech industry's future remains exciting, even if the initial predictions of a complete banking disruption haven't fully materialized. It's a nuanced perspective, acknowledging fintech successes while highlighting the resilience of traditional banking giants.
A fascinating analysis. It certainly gives us a lot to think about. Thanks for breaking it down for us.
My pleasure. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.